Thank you so much for joining us on Straight Outta Savannah. My guest, Alessia Minkus, is here, and she's going to share with you who she is and what she's all about. So Alessia, take it away.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be able to, serve your audience and, answer questions that might help them move things forward or might inspire them as well.
Yes, that is what's up. So what is it that you do for your life's work?
That's right. So funny enough, you might notice from my accent that I'm not a native English speaker. So I was born actually in Rome, Italy. Oh, and I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, which people think that would have inspired me to start a business. But turns out my parents were, those type of entrepreneurs that had started a business out of a big passion, but had no systems, no know-how, no little, really leadership skills. And so what I noticed, what I observed growing up was them really, having created a job for themselves, where they were working very hard and having not so good, results, like working a lot for little money. So I wasn't very inspired by that, to be honest with you at that time. So much that I had decided I would never own my own business in my life. I wanted to do something completely different. And then how life happens, right?
Yes.
At some point something happens and, you kind of fall into your path.
Yes.
And so that was happened to me because when I was 19 years old, my dad had a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
Just, like totally a turning point in my life completely. And at that time, luckily, he made it, but the doctor said he needed to take 6 months kind of out of his life, out of his business to really focus on his health in order to be able to be sustainable.
Wow.
And that was like kind of like a lot of drama at that time, I remember, because of course, like, again, as I told you, they didn't have systems, they didn't have teams, they didn't have. And so it was like, how will this survive? Like, how will this actually work and move forward, etc.
Yes.
My mom, of course, wanted to be with my dad. And so it was very complex. And I remember we had a meeting with my mom and some other people that were working for the company at that time. And somebody said, well, we would really need somebody to take the business and kind of keep it stable for 6 months until, my dad, Johnny, comes back. And I don't know, Tammy, if you remember how naive you were at 19 years old, but I remember how naive I was because during that meeting, I raised my hand and I said, I'll do it. How difficult can it be?
And of course, I know about that. Yeah.
Right. Well, of course, I discovered that was crazy. Like even just thinking about that was crazy.
Yes.
So I started, and so I took over my family business, which at that time was actually generating about 10 million euro in revenue, very little, if anything, in profit. And so it was a lot of work, very little money left, and just like, really being like busy.
Yeah.
Not only that, but I knew nothing about that. And so a few weeks after starting this journey, like I started to see things go really, really bad. And that's when I understood that I really needed some help. And I got help. As difficult as it was, like 20 years ago in Italy, there weren't that many professional advisors and consultants, etc. So I really had to kind of dive deep and figure things out, etc. But at some point, I was able to piece things together, and I found, a system to start to actually, have more freedom while I started to see the business kind of growing. And to make the long story short, in 3 years, we tripled the business, getting to 30 million euro revenue per year. We as well, finally, we were able to have actually, a very good profit, a very good profitability. And so it was actually a very fun journey, so fun that I got bit by the bug of entrepreneurship. And over the next few years, I started 7 other companies around Europe. They all got to 7 and 8 figures. And then in 2012, I met my current husband. And when I met him, he was consulting and training business owners on how to grow their business. And he said, oh my gosh, you need to tell your system, you need to teach it, you need to help business owners. And so suddenly I transitioned again. That was the second turning point. And I said, I put CEOs in place, partners in place, some businesses, I exited them. And I moved to Australia where my husband was living at that time.
Okay.
And I started to teach, advise, consult business owners. And that's what I've been in the last 10 years. I've been doing that for 10 years now. And together, first of all, we took the business that my husband was already running as an advisor, speaker, coach, etc. And we grew that to 8 figures. We became one of the biggest business training company globally.
Nice.
We organized over 2,000 events in 32 different countries, spoke on stages as big as 15,000 people with icons like Tony Robbins, Sir Richard Branson, Les Brown, Lisa Nichols, Kevin Harrington, Vishen Lakhiani, Kim Kiyosaki, Randy Zuckerberg, and many more. And so that's been like a crazy ride. And then COVID hit. And so the event stopped. Yes. And so we were like, well, what do we do now? And we decided to create a couple of studios out of our office and start to do things virtually. And it has been a lot of fun, actually. We discovered that it was great to be able to reach all these people still in all these countries. In our programs and among our clients, we have people from over 60 different countries.
Oh, nice.
And we can do that now from home. So
yes,
that's really cool. So yeah, that's what I do. And specifically, I specialize in really helping women-led companies scale to 7 and 8 figures, because that's been my journey and my story and kind of my success. So I love giving back and actually helping other women achieving the same results and the same freedom, right? Because what I love is scaling sustainably, like scaling without being trapped in the business, but actually having the business really work for you.
Yes, that's the piece. That is the piece, because I talk to so many entrepreneurs, and so many of them are, they're trapped in their business. It's like they built themselves a job.
That's right.
And so that
happens so often, and then they become the bottleneck to their own growth. Yes. So it's frustrating, on multiple actually aspects, because it's like they're working a lot, they're not getting, the results that they want, they're not earning the money that they want. Actually, there are some studies that show that while most business owners start their business because they would like to have more freedom and more money, the reality is that when we track these business owners a few years down the line, we discover that most of them, the data I think says 95% of them would earn more money and have more free time if they would work for somebody else.
Wow.
I think it's very, very sad, right? And then my specific passion, of course, with women-led businesses, makes me, even more sensitive, because, women-led businesses in the US today represent about 40% of all businesses. And yet only 4.2% of women-led businesses reach the 7-figure mark in revenue. And so it's a very tiny percentage if you think about that. So there are a lot of people that are stuck in a position where there isn't enough revenue for them to delegate, hire, create teams, and therefore have that leverage and freedom that they were dreaming of when they first started. So that's why I'm passionate about what I do, because I feel like, when we can actually create that revenue bump, it creates a lot of other opportunities. Like suddenly they can, again, hire people, they can have systems, they can have freedom, they can start to actually really build their lifestyle through their business instead of having to work always around the business.
And that 4.2% of the women that are making the 7 figures includes like Oprah, right?
Well, she's making like
Ellen,
more than that.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like you think about that, it's like, okay, yeah, that includes Oprah.
Yeah, I mean, it includes a lot of women, that are doing great stuff. And actually, funny enough, I was looking recently at the statistic, and it says that in the last 2 years, first of all, women-led businesses have grown, like in terms of number of how many businesses there are, has grown faster than any other type of business. But as well, that the actually the groups that have had the most growth that in terms of numbers are at the two extremes. So either micro businesses that really kind of like are starting and really struggle in terms of revenue, or the multi-million businesses, the 7, the 8, 9 figures. Those have both really grown a lot. So there are a lot of women that are starting their business, and yet they get stuck there. But the ones that figure it out, they can reach 7, 8, 9 figure in the revenue. And of course, like it changes the whole game.
So when you speak to your clients, because I can see that it probably would be some type of fear there, even though you never want to admit that. We never want to admit fear, right? But I could see that it would be some type of fear there when you're scaling at that level. Once you're already, at 6 figures, and then you're trying to scale to 7 figures. Talk to me about how you talk to them at that level, because I know that, there's like a level, and this is why they probably reach out to you, or someone like you, they reach out because they're at this place where they know it's time for them to scale, or they know they can see it, they can feel it, they can taste it, but for something is keeping them from doing that. And I know that probably on a level it's fear. So
Yeah.
talk to me about how you talk to them at this point.
So the fun thing is that I come from a very strategical background, having actually run companies, strategized, created team, recruited them, trained them, managed them, etc. And at the same time, one of my passion has been personal development and leadership development for many, many years, more than I can remember. And so what I work with them is really these two kind of, I say we move on 2 tracks. First of all, they need to understand what they need to do strategically, because the fact is that what has helped them getting to 6 figures is not what is going to get them to 7 and 8 figures. They need to actually really change the way they look at their business, they run their business, they relate to their business. But then at the same time, they really need to grow as leaders in order to be able to manage the new complexity in terms of systems, teams, people, and as well in terms of actually showing up as a leader in their marketplace. So I work on both things, like what they need to do strategically, what is the best plan, like kind of like roadmap, and then execution and resources, etc. And at the same time, we really work on helping them become the leader that they know they want to become, they know they can be, and they really aspire to be for themselves, for their business, and really for the marketplace. Because one thing that is very interesting is that women are very, very community oriented. And so we know by the data, that when a woman becomes more successful and actually has more money, more cash coming through her hands, more of that money comes back into the community. There is a lot of giving back in many different ways. Yeah. So it's very important to really support women, I feel. And it's not a conversation of women versus men. I have my business partner is my husband, and I love him and I appreciate him. And we have grown so much because of the integration of both of us. So it's not about women instead of men, right, but it's about having that equal representation. So helping women actually having just as many seats at the table as men have, right? Because that's when we can all win. That's when we can kind of learn from each other and contribute in order to create more innovation, in order to create, more change in the world. And we know that, we need that now more than ever.
Yes, that is so right. Yeah, we do. So when you and your husband work together, how has that been for your
I always get this question. And so I remember years ago, prior to COVID, we were running an event in Singapore, and we had invited as one of our guest speakers, Sir Richard Branson. And so we had thousands of people in the audience. It was a great event. And we had a group of our own mastermind students that had traveled from all over the world to be there because, they just wanted to be part of this great event. And we did a little session with them where we were kind of answering questions, etc. And at some point, somebody asked me, they said, so tell us about working with your husband. And, of course, like putting up such a big event is very stressful. You have a lot of like pressure. And so it's complex. I mean, when we are under stress, right? It's complex.
Yeah.
And just the day before, we had received a gift from a client, and it's a client that has a business that makes knives.
Oh.
And so I was telling them about that. Like, my answer was, well, let's just put it this way. Yesterday we received this gift. We opened it, and it was two like steak knives, very beautiful, very, very nicely made. And when we received them and I opened them, I looked at them and I said, oh my gosh, Kane, luckily we did not have them last night. Because the reality is that working with your husband, I feel like everything becomes extreme, meaning the good things become so much better. Like the good moments are so much better anytime we can share them, right? Mm-hmm. And when there are complex moments, there is pressure. It's not like you say, oh my gosh, like I have a really intense time at work. Now I go home and I change gears. No, like you take it with you for dinner, in the bedroom, in the kitchen, like everywhere, right? So it definitely like enhances everything. Now, I think it's super worth it. I mean, I love it and I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think it's a great way to grow as a couple as well. And of course, it does require a lot of work on yourself in order to be able to, manage these situations the best way possible and show up in a way that, it becomes, even the complex times become kind of a stepping stone to achieve new, greater heights together.
Yes, I could see that. That would be something, is what I'm saying. Oh, I asked that question, almost selfishly, because that's something my husband and I are considering. Actually, we're doing it. And it's like, sometimes it feels good and sometimes it feels different.
Well, I mean, that's true about everything though, right? Isn't it true about working alone? I mean, sometimes it feels good because you are having maybe some sort of results, success, and you feel proud of yourself. But when things don't go well, you feel lonely and you feel like, a little bit like isolated, like frustrated, and you don't have anything to share that with. So, I feel like that's true for everything. I mean, everything in life has, two sides.
Yes, absolutely.
Every coin has two sides. So you just need to pick which two sides you want to have.
Yes.
You will still have them. So I don't know, again, for me, I love running businesses in partnership. I've owned to this day now, 9 different businesses, and I've always had partners. I mean, not always my husband, of course, because I didn't know him at the beginning, and because, sometimes we have ventures that we do with somebody else, but I've always had a partner because I love the dynamic. Although, yes, it makes some things more complex. I feel like sharing the process, the journey, the growth, and being able to bounce out ideas and being able to, manage things together. It's just like completely different level. Yes. And for me, it's just, it's part of the fun of running a business is actually sharing it with somebody that you care about. I mean, normally all my business partners have been, people that I actually cared about personally, like friends and, family, or people that, colleagues that I got to know. And there was really some sort of good connection where we were sharing some passion, some values. And so it made the whole journey so much more fun.
See, and that's a different thing right there that you just said, because I've talked to lots of people, but And that was one of the things that most people are like, no, they don't want to run a business with somebody that they know or somebody that they care about or somebody, friends and all that stuff. Matter of fact, it was one of the business advice things in an article that I read. And I was like, okay, they're like, no, you don't want to run it with your friends or with your family or nobody like that. And so, but I hear that you're saying something totally different, that as you ran these businesses with people that you cared about, they flourished. And I think that's probably one of the reasons, because, you guys, it was like you had your own personal mastermind.
Well, yeah. Plus, I feel like, of course, you are taking on, a bigger responsibility. I mean, at that point, if you, especially if you fail, it's not just about you, it's about somebody else. It's just like when you have a child. I don't know if you have children, but I have 2 children. The moment they are born, you understand that life is not just about you anymore.
Yes.
And if things don't go well, you are not even that worried about you anymore. You are really like thinking constantly about how can you make sure that they are protected, right?
Yes, yes.
So the same thing I feel is for a business. Of course, you are taking on a bigger responsibility, but on some levels, that's really what has driven me, for example. And I know my partner were just the same, like in really wanting to create results, because I felt like I wanted to make sure it was worth their time. I wanted to make sure, if I would be running a business alone, which is why I don't, I know that maybe sometimes, I would be a little bit more, I wouldn't say lazy, but, maybe taking things a little bit slower, because I would be like, it's okay. I mean, if it doesn't work this month, it's no problem. But now I have somebody else that is in the game with me. So I feel accountable. I feel, responsible in a good way. Like I want to make sure that, we are taking care of each other.
Yes.
And so I feel like that really has inspired a lot of action, a lot of fast movement, a lot of even taking risks. I mean, first of all, it's easier to take risks when you're not alone, right? I mean, I'm not talking necessarily about physical risk, but like emotional risk, right?
Yes,
trying something new, launching a new product, having a meeting with a new client. You might feel a little bit at the beginning when you are new to the game, a little bit like, but if you share with somebody, first of all, it's easier. And second, now you're in together and you're like, I'm not going to disappoint them and just not show up. And so, things kind of move faster. And yes, I mean, it does create a little bit more pressure because of that. But I think that, if well managed in terms of, again, communication and leadership and really like introspection, like when you can look into yourself and make sure that you're aligned before you get into a partnership, then I think that it's actually a great like accelerator to create results faster.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I believe that you were saying about when you're already in alignment, that you're in alignment with this person or this idea or whatever it is, how easy that is to move forward. You have a way where you don't want to procrastinate, and that's what I heard you say.
Yeah. I mean, imagine that you are starting to run a business with your husband, and now your whole family depends on that business.
Right.
I mean, there is no plan B. There is no option of allowing anything to stop you, because first of all, you can't afford it. And you don't want that. You don't want that for him. You don't want that for you. And we know that, although we don't want that for ourselves anyway, but, being accountable to ourselves is the most difficult thing in life, right? Yeah. We know that, every time we make a commitment, a New Year's resolution, if it's just about us, it's easy to slip away from that, right?
Exactly.
But if there is somebody else in the game, then it's different. And again, you kind of, I felt very often that by working with my husband specifically, of all the partners, you kind of close the option of plan B. It's just like, on some levels when you get married, right? I mean, before, like when you date, you might be like, well, if this doesn't work out, maybe I will date somebody else. But marrying, it's a little bit like, crossing that line and saying there is no plan B. Like this needs to work. Like we are in it together and we need to figure it out.
Unless you're my ex-husband. He had plan B all the time.
Right.
I have plan B right now with my current husband. I got you.
Well, I mean, even if things don't work out, I mean, you're responsible to kind of work that out between the two of you, right? And
Right.
especially if you have kids, like it's not like you can say, well, it didn't work out. We're not like you're responsible to actually work it out in a way that leaves everybody, completed and whole, etc. So there is a responsibility that you have to the other person that that definitely kind of holds you up to a different standard
Right.
than you would have if it's just about you.
It's the difference between why some women stay and they probably should leave, because they're thinking about, the kids, even though that never works out. And people always know because kids always know. I mean, kids can tell when there's animosity in the house and all this stuff. And so, but a lot of women do that. They say, you know what, I'm going to stay because, we have these kids and, we got to raise.
Well, sad enough, a lot of women do that as well because they are scared. I mean, again, because a lot of women are actually, and that's actually part of my mission. I mean, funny enough that you mentioned that without even knowing, but so I come from a family where my grandmother was a very strong, very talented woman, never learned how to take her talents and turn them into a real business for herself. And therefore, she never felt comfortable and confident that she could potentially leave her relationship and take care of herself and her kids. And that, brought her to actually points where she was accepting all sorts of compromises that no woman should accept. Like, for example, staying in a relationship that wasn't respectful of who she was.
Mm-hmm.
And she did it because, she wanted to protect her kids and she wanted to, she wanted to make sure they were taken care of. And she didn't feel like she could do that.
Right.
That's actually one of the drives. People sometimes ask me why you're so passionate about women-led businesses, because I have kind of touched with my own, on my own skin. I've had the experience of what it means for a woman to not feel empowered. It's not, I mean, my work is not just about business. I at least that's not how I relate to it. I mean, I support women in growing their businesses, but therefore I support them on really taking control of their life and knowing that they can make any choice they need to make in order to feel safe, and feel respected and feel like they're living the life that they deserve, because they don't ever need to worry whether they will be able to sustain that financially.
Yes.
So I feel like that's very important. That's really like part of, again, my mission, part of why I do what I do. It's because I know that that can make such a big difference, in a woman's life. And even more, I mean, I have a really sweet spot for kids. So, I'm very, very connected to the difference that it makes for a child, to grow up with a role model of a mom that is secure, is confident, knows that if she is in a relationship, if she's in any situation, it's because she chooses to, not because she feels like she has no choice.
Yes, because so many times, just like you said, women are doing these things out of obligation. And that to me is such a deeper mission for you, because, and I knew there was something deeper. I was just waiting for it to come out. But I knew that was a deeper mission as far as supporting the women, because, people do that all the time. There are lots of people that do that. However, I knew that there was something different in the way that you support women, and the mission behind it is what it is. And that's like so powerful, because there are so many women out there, just like your grandma, with all these skills and, just, don't turn it into what it should be,
Right.
like it should
Right.
a bigger.
And that's really sad.
Yeah. I'm with you. And I'm the same as far as my grandmother was amazing. And she was, oh my God, she was a healer of healers. And I feel privileged to be able to take up that mantle from her. And I knew I was supposed to be the one to do it. You know how you're wondering who in the family is going to take this mantle, because it was so powerful. And she was 4'9", but she was
a powerhouse, probably.
Yes, a powerhouse. And it's like, oh my God. So I think about that. It actually inspired me to write a book. So I have a book that I'm filling, multi-author, about stories about our grandmothers.
Oh,
You know,
that's awesome.
yeah. So I'm excited about that because I got the idea to write the story, and then I got the idea to open it up and share it and let other people come and share stories about their grandmother, especially in this time, because it's so crazy out there, and every news story you see and everything you see is like death and murder and COVID and all this crap. And it's like, can we read something that makes us feel good? Can we
Yeah, we
write
need good
some?
stories. We need
Yeah.
positive stories. We need inspiration.
Yes. So that to me is like powerful, that you were inspired by your grandmother to make sure that women are taken care of as far as business, because just like you said, it's a whole mindset. If you haven't had anybody to encourage you, or you haven't figured out a way to encourage yourself, or even to find out what it is that you want, because
Mhm.
that is one of the major things that I see with a lot of people. They just don't really know what they want. And so, you have to take that time to just figure that out, or, if you're like a lot of people, to sit down and talk to spirit and say, or to even take inventory of what it is that you are good at, what you're supposed to do,
That's
But
right.
anyway, so do you have a program or anything that you are feeling right now that you'd like to share with the people?
Well, so I run a company that is focused specifically on women, and it's called 𝐁𝐮𝐲 like,
Nice.
you know. And so if there is actually a Facebook forum that if women want to have support and be updated on everything that we do in order to support women in business specifically, they can join it, and it's called 𝐁𝐮𝐲 live events. So I invite everybody to join there. We share a lot of videos, interviews, free resources. We do free events every once in a while to actually just help women, sharing different techniques on how they can take their business and really scale it to the next level, in order to be able to have again more of that freedom and more of that
Yes.
abundance that they were dreaming about when they started, and they actually deserve it. So it's really important that they get the right tools in order to achieve that.
Yes, that is so perfect. Because the thing is people are always looking for information and there's information everywhere. And Google, I mean, I went to look up something, it was 12 years ago. So I was like,
That's right.
wow.
And we always say everything that we share, we try to not share like individual pieces of information, because I feel like that's what you find a lot of. And then
Yes.
you need to piece it together and understand how does it work all together. So we're very careful, everything that we share, creating real systems where, if we are sharing a resource, whether it's a video, I don't know, a checklist, a workbook, whatever, right? In order to solve a problem, there is kind of like the whole system to go from A to Z and have that one problem solved.
Yes.
Because I feel like, again, sometimes we find so many information online, and first of all, they can be, different. And then you try to put them together, and because they don't actually fit together as a system, things then don't work out. So we are very, very methodical in making sure that we create systems that people can apply and follow, like a recipe, right? So instead of just saying, well, if you want chicken, you can grill it, and then maybe, what you want to do is a soup and it doesn't work. Instead, we do a recipe, like what do you do from the moment you have the raw chicken to the moment you actually have the chicken soup in your bowl. So you follow the process and you have the result.
That is awesome. That's awesome. All right. So we're going to wrap up. Let the people know where they can connect with you.
Yeah. So again, on Facebook, they can find 𝐁𝐮𝐲 live events, or they can find my my website. It's alessiaminkus.com, my name. So that's very easy. And there they can as well find all the links to connect, and as well to download free resources, etc.
That is so powerful. All right. So we'll have all of that also in the show notes. So you're able to, click on it and all that. And I am so grateful and appreciative of Alessia joining me. It's been an amazing conversation, just like I knew it would, just like all the other conversations. So make sure that you are following us, follow her on Facebook. You can follow me anywhere that you find me, but make sure that you're following her so that you can get more information and more tools to help you if you are a woman in business. So again, thank you so much for joining us on Straight Outta Savannah. Bye
Thank
now.
you so much. Well, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome, and thank you for coming and sharing all of this goodness.